Hello, welcome to CLC News. Today is the 7th of October 2020. I'd like to apologise for the delay in this video, but this was due to a couple of problems we've been dealing with over the last few days, which were urgent. Today's programme would like to cover 2 or 3 issues, but what we'd like to do to commence with is just ask you a couple of questions and to get you to think about our so-called position under this COVID pandemic breakdown. For the first time in centuries, we're not actually fighting with another country. We're not fighting with another war, but living men and living women are now being attacked by their own state. This is not just in one country, this is worldwide. It's now them and us. It's the so-called 1%. People's rights are being removed daily. Now, you have no longer the right to travel, which keeps them happy. You have no longer the right to even leave your house because of lockdown. They're discussing mandatory medical checks, mandatory vaccinations, and if you are brave enough to try and go out, if you're still allowed to, you have the situation whereby you can only go out with wearing masks. So they're attacking everything, all your inherent birthrights. This has to stop. Unfortunately, as we said earlier, you're not fighting another country, you are dealing with the state. They've been planning this for decades. They have obviously an agenda. Unfortunately, the people don't matter. Now, unless something is done sooner rather than later, you're going to find that time is run out. It's too late. During the last few years since the CLC, the common law courts, have been up and running, we've actually established for the first time ever lawfully run courts, which are run by the people. It carries with it the authority of the people, and it has no involvement by the state. This has actually been acknowledged by the state, and they can't do anything about it because it's run lawfully and it's run by the people. We have a couple of options now to get the people to stand together, a call for arms if you like. Because time's running out, you have to stand up now and be counted. We're not asking people to go out and march, petition. There are simple things that you can do to assist the process, and that would benefit everyone, all living men and women. Bearing in mind that the state we deal with, whether it be the government, whether it be the courts, whether it be the police, the councils, the authorities, they are all registered companies run for profit. Living men and living women have superior authority, and it's time that we pull together. There is no point in trying to run off at splinter groups to try to take on the state. You're going to dilute the effort, and the people of the common law court now are starting to learn this and are standing together. We'd like to point out at this moment in time we have people throughout the world, living men and living women, who have confirmed their birth by way of a declaration to the common law court. They have done this from 136 countries, which is something to be proud of. We'd like to move forward now, and as you said, there's a call to arms. If people are fed up with what's currently going on, and bearing in mind there's not a COVID issue, there are other reasons for this so-called pandemic. Whether you want to look at 5G or obviously some of the other explanations, various doctors and nurse medical experts, practitioners have came out and explained the situation regarding COVID, which we will touch on later on. But it's certainly not enough to warrant a pandemic, and obviously the removal of everyone's rights. This has been engineered by the state. They know what they're doing, and it's not for the benefit of the people. Now, as we said just now, what we're going to do is put 2 or 3 options to you. This may be the last times you can actually find yourself in a position to do something. And bearing in mind, you're not doing this for yourselves. You're also doing it for your family. You're doing it for your grandchildren. Now, if it's not worth standing up now, you'll find that obviously in the future, these rights will be removed and you will no longer have this opportunity. So please listen carefully. On the issue of the medical industry and this COVID issue, what we'd like to do is highlight some of the information that seems to be coming to light. And again, to ask yourselves to think about how you feel about this. First of all, in relation to the wearing of masks. The wearing of masks is not compulsory. They've instigated legislation themselves, which is statutes and acts of parliament. They refer to rules and guidelines, which are not the law. Bearing in mind, even if it goes through parliament and they decide to pass it as a law, it's not a law without your consent. Common law is simple. Common law exists for living men and living women. Even within their statutory system, a law does not become a law unless the public consent. That's you and me, living men and living women. If you don't consent, it's not law. Therefore, you can withdraw your consent. These rules are not applicable. Now, we're hearing from the face mask, they're going to step up things, and we're hearing about mandatory testing. These testing issues should be nipped in the bud immediately. There are implications regarding everyone's health in the future and the possibility of tagging you or putting in chips into the system to try and highlight not only whether you'll test positive or not, but also so they can get access to your families in your homes through these bubbles that they're offering. Now, in addition to that, we've also heard about the mandatory vaccinations are coming. With the mandatory vaccinations, we've actually been informed in England already that some of the schools and the children there are actually being vaccinated without their parents' consent. Parents are not informed, and what's actually happened is some of the children have been vaccinated while at school. When they return home, the schools were then contacted to ask for an explanation as to why the children had been vaccinated, and the response from the schools were that it wasn't the schools that were doing it, it was the NHS. In effect, what you have is the NHS going into the schools because they've been advised to do so. They're then getting access to the children and they're then vaccinating the children. Now, the schools, when asked what the vaccinations were for, couldn't give any information, and asked what was in the vaccinations, again, couldn't give any information. This is ludicrous. It's a breach of every right as the living men and women have. It's a breach of various codes, including within the statutory system, and the Nuremberg Code, legislation, United Nations. It's ludicrous. It's crimes against the people, and it has to stop immediately. How would you like it if this was your child that was being vaccinated for no reason, and they just stuck something into their arm and injected them without your knowledge, without your consent? It's ridiculous. Now, not only that, you've then got the issue whereby doctors and nurses and medical practitioners are all speaking up now. There's many and many whistleblowers who are speaking up about what's currently going on, the fact that we don't have a COVID crisis, the medication that's currently being allocated or given out to people in hospitals, care homes and the like is inappropriate, and in certain cases is actually killing people. Now, this is part of the plan, the World Health Organization, to try and depopulate the planet, but they're actually going ahead with this. Now, when they're actually passing this information, if it's coming from doctors and nurses and health practitioners within the industry, it's now time to sit and think about what is actually going on. These doctors, nurses and practitioners have actually taken time, risked their jobs, and they're speaking up as whistleblowers. Unfortunately, they're not being protected. The government, for doing so, are now removing the licenses from these individuals, which is ridiculous. And now, obviously, this creates a problem within the industry whereby they're supposed to be protecting people. These individuals are also losing their jobs. They're no longer able to support their families, and that's a knock-on effect from there. Well, what we'd like to do to these individuals is we'd like to inform you, anyone within the health industry who's licensed within the industry is not only licensed under there, but they would be licensed under common law. So what we're proposing to do is to set up a category in the coming week, the next week or so, whereby all health practitioners, if they're medically licensed, we will also license them under common law. Now, if you're not sure about this, or you have any stories that you require information, we've set up a new email address at the Common Law Court, which you could write to. The email address is medical@commonlawcourt.com. So if you have any questions, or you're not sure what's going on, or you wish to speak to someone at the Common Law Court, please email this address and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. We have taken on additional staff to help with this and the increased numbers just now, so we should be able to get back to you reasonably quick. But as we've pointed out just now, to protect yourself in the future, if you wish to continue to conduct business and operate within the industry, you're licensed to do so. We're quite happy to confirm that position under common law. You do not need a license from the state. It will not finish you off. It's as if for some reason they remove it. They're doing it to protect vested interests for themselves and the big pharma companies and the politicians. If you lose your license, you will still be able to operate under common law. So please contact us at the Common Law Court and we'll discuss this option with you. This applies to all practitioners, whether or not they've lost their license or not. Even if you still work within the industry, you would be able to register under the Common Law Court in this category to confirm that you are licensed, and that would protect you in the future. On the subject of protection, we will offer just a brief insight here to assist with other people throughout the country. We're aware that many businesses are going to the wall. They're being closed, and again, the restrictions placed on them means that they're going to close very shortly. It's ridiculous having to restrict people coming into the shops with the facial masks, and obviously this is various time limits, restrictions, how they can operate, what they have to do to stay in business, and obviously how they'll continue to operate with the public. These are all guidelines from the government. You do not have to comply with them. Now, although you have a company registered under the statutory system, there is also a second system available whereby you can operate under common law. Now, bearing in mind that common law only deals with living men and living women, we're actually looking for these individuals to confirm that they are the responsible individual for a company. They would then highlight the trading name for the company, and they can then operate under common law, which means that the statutory legislation and rules is not applicable. So yes, should you want to operate your business, whether it be a shop, a licensed premises, anything at all, if you wish to operate under common law, you're entitled to do so, and you'll have the protection of the Common Law Court and the people behind you. You can open your doors to the public, and there's no compulsion to comply with the statutory rules. All they are is rules. Now, if we get many companies signing up to do this, it's very simple to do. We can actually start opening up this country again and getting businesses on their feet and getting the people into these premises. So please bear in mind, if you are looking at something like this, contact us through the Common Law Court site, or if you want, just simply register your business on the Common Law Court site. There's a page with an explanation available on the site under the deeds heading for categories. Please read that, and if you require further clarification, contact us at the court via email and we'll let you know what to do. Okay? Welcome back. What we'd like to do now is to discuss one of the options available to the people to show their support, to basically stand together to address this corruption and to assist you with the current problems that you're facing regarding the lockdown. Now, this applies to things like your mask that you have to wear, supposedly, also things like mandatory vaccinations and also mandatory health checks. Anything to do with the legislation, you're entitled, as a living man or woman, to withdraw your consent. If you withdraw your consent, the rules are no longer applicable to you. In this country, similar to most countries on this planet, we govern by consent. We also police by consent. If you withdraw your consent, these rules are not applicable to you. Now, at this moment in time, it is very difficult trying to deal with the state. We've seen the situation in Hyde Park in London with obviously the police. Now, the police are not actually standing alone there because they're actually recruiting security companies to come and assist them, putting them into police uniforms, and they're breaking up these meetings and obviously issuing out large fines for anyone that dares to stand up and speak and inform the public of what's going on. We're dealing with quite a few cases in their so-called courts, and we will be in the near future. But we're quite confident that they will not be able to enforce these actions. They will not be able to enforce the fines, and the people will prevail with what we're doing just now. However, to assist people just now, what we are doing is we've came up with an option. Now, it's essential, first and foremost, remember, you have to remove yourself from the system. Within their system, they have their various rules and guidelines and statutes and acts of parliament. This is all for the legal fiction. The legal fiction, which is your straw man, the living entity, the fictitious name. If you are in their system, their rules apply. If you do not wish to comply with their rules, remove them, remove yourself from the system. All you're required to do is record your birth with the common law court. Now, in doing so, all you're doing is making a declaration to the people that you are born and that you exist as a living entity, a living man or a living woman. It's a simple declaration that's free of charge. When you've submitted your declaration and click submit on the form, you've verified your position through this declaration. Now you can stand as a living man or woman. This does not affect your day-to-day rights that you have within their system. It won't change anything at all. You're still entitled to everything you would be. The common law court is set up to provide a lawful remedy. Now, in relation to this COVID legislation and the public restrictions that have been placed on them, what we've decided to do is come up with a card. Now, with the card that we've actually taken, it is obviously two-sided. It's like your typical bank card. But what we've done on one side, we have the common law court logo, and we have your rights listed on the front of the card. At the base of the card, we'll have your name. Now, this is individual for each individual. So you put your name on the card, and this confirms how you stand under common law. But bearing in mind that the state system do not accept common law, don't like dealing with living men and women. So what we've actually done on the reverse of the card, we've actually reminded them of their own statutory legislation, which also confirms that you have the right to remove consent. So either way, under common law, and as a living man or woman, or under the statutory system, it says you don't have to comply with their rules. So what we're doing now is putting these cards out and asking the public to sign up and to purchase one of these cards. Now, for recording your birth, if you haven't already done so, there's no cost. What we're doing is charging £7 for one of these cards. Now, bearing in mind it's sent by recorded delivery, it's £2.40. That leaves you with £4.60. It says which will go towards the common law court. Now, unfortunately, because we're dealing in the UK just now, this option is only available to people within the UK just now. We will try and get this out abroad, but initially we're starting in the UK. Now, the reason we're setting this up is to get the people the protection they require. Now, yesterday I had to go to Glasgow on business. I was there for a meeting, but I took some time and visited some shops in Glasgow and very seldom through there. Having went into 5 or 6 shops, and then I went in for something to eat afterwards, I was approached by 3 members of the public, which is strange. The reason they approached me is I had on my display is one of these cards, and I saw a small plastic wallet with a lanyard. Now, because I had it on, they approached me and stated, look, we see that you have a card on, and obviously you're not wearing a mask. He says, can you inform us where you got these cards from? So we pointed out obviously why the card was used and where we got the card from. They had informed me immediately that they were going back to register their name on the site with their declaration for their birth, and they were going to apply for the card. Now, there was an elderly woman spoke to me. She was wearing a mask. It wasn't for her, but her husband had a lung condition, found it very difficult to breathe, and was desperate to get one of these cards. On hearing what the government are doing and the fact that he couldn't get a card, he wanted to sign up. The other two individuals who asked about the cards were both employees. Now, when I'd been in the premises, they had both approached me and asked where we got the cards, because they had wanted to take off their mask at work, and they wanted something to show their bosses, their employers, but they were struggling to find them. So having passed on the information, likewise, they had also said they were going to get these cards. Now, the benefit of having these cards is self-explanatory. It helps with the masks. It will help you with forced or mandatory vaccinations and mandatory testing, which will help and protect you there. The main issue of having the cards is to set up common law court peace service, which is equivalent to the statutory police force we want. We use the words peace service, but we will operate with CLC constables, that's common law court constables. Now, the money that comes in from the cards, that will be taken and put into a fund. We are actually at the process just now, we're only 3 or 4 weeks away from running our first courses. This is something that's been working on for the last 5 or 6 months. We actually have a training course set up for these constables. It's a 2-day training course. They will have to obviously come, and we'll need hotel accommodation for them. So they'll get the accommodation, they'll get the 2-day training course, and if successful, they'll then be sworn in as constables, and they will be given uniforms, which means that they can then return home, and they will then obviously be working for the common law court throughout the UK. Now, we have had many people, ex-military, ex-police, all wanting to get involved because of what's happening with the state. We have also been approached by many members of the public who also wish to stand and obviously sign up for this peace service, so they wish to become constables. Now, I don't think that we have an issue with numbers, but what we will have an issue with is obviously funding. This is done by the people. Now, with the cards, the money from the cards will go to develop the court and obviously get these constables. So ask yourself just now, would you like your own CLC constables? Bearing in mind the common law court's only been up for 3 years, we've already had confirmation from the state that they're aware that the common law court exists. They're aware that it's set up by the people, that we convene our own courts and issue our own court orders. The paperwork that we provide has never ever been challenged because it's lawful and it carries with it the authority of the people. So they have never ever challenged this. Only recently we've got off numerous cases we've dealt with, we've had results recently by using this procedure and paperwork. It is successful, and unfortunately the state know that they cannot deal with it. Now, having achieved this and set up a people's court for the first time ever, it's never happened before because the judicial system has always been run by the state, the Crown, the government. Now, for the first time ever, we have a common law court that is set up by the people, it's for the people, and it has no state involvement at all. Now, to protect ourselves, we can move this forward. It's okay convening your own court cases and obtaining decisions, but we need enforcement. We also need to protect the people. Now you have the chance to do so. You don't have to take to the streets. You don't have to protest. All you're required to do is protect yourself, your families, and children. Sign up to the common law court, make a declaration of your birth, which leaves you applicable for a card. Beneath the shop heading on the category, the first category down is withdrawn consent. If you click on that, you will see there's a picture of the card. You'll be required to enter your name, that's your first name and your surname, and then you will then clarify whether you need the card for the living man, the living woman, or a child. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, on this page there is a lengthy discussion there. This is our explanation as to what we're doing with the cards and why we're using these cards. But obviously, it says once you pay the £7, the funding goes towards this. Now, the more cards we sell, the more it will offer protection to the people day to day, and not only that, the more constables we will sign up. We have obviously funding available just now. We're going to commence the training. What we'd like to do is continue these courses. They're only 2-day courses, and we can probably train up initially 25 to start with. And of course, as we get more trained up, we might have 3 or 4, we might train up 50 to 100 at the same time, but we'll start off initially with 25. It's a 2-day course, so if there's funding, if it permits, we will continue to roll these out. Now, it won't be long before we have many of these constables throughout the country that we'll use to protect the people. They're not there to fine you, they're not there to work for the state, they're not there to assist the state. They're there to protect living men and living women and to provide a lawful remedy and to assist you if you're being attacked. Now, with these constables, they will be available. They will be in an area hopefully close to you. And again, they will be out during the day in uniform, as is patrolling the streets. So when they're on the streets, there'll be the opportunity to speak to them. They'll be there obviously to discuss what's going on, to explain what's happening. And when called on, they will be there to protect men and women. So bearing in mind, for the first time ever, you've achieved what we wanted. We've got our own court. Now we need our own service, peace service, which will allow us and give us our own constables. That's CLC constables. They will have a uniform recognised throughout the UK. The existing police constables, chief constables will be notified of this, and also the politicians will be told when this is set up. But bearing in mind, it's essential that we get out as many of these cards as possible to protect you during this COVID crisis. But in doing so, the more cards that we're selling, the more constables we have. Now, are you happy with the protection that you receive from the police just now? Bearing in mind what's going on in London, and when they're arresting people and they're fining you for walking the street, they question what you're doing. It says, are you happy with the government and what they're doing? Well, it's time now to stand up, stand together instead of in isolated groups, stand under one banner and deal with it through the common law court. You'll have your own constables, you have your own courts set up already, and if need be, individuals causing harm, loss and injury to the people will be prosecuted. So please spread the word, share this, and we'll get these cards out as soon as possible. Given the problems we've had just now with orders and things like that, we'd just like to clarify a couple of points. We have taken on quite a lot of help just now. Now, in relation to the issue of these cards, we've taken on additional equipment to deal with the cards, and what we've also done is taken on additional staff. Now, these staff are not dealing with other issues at the Common Law Court. They're dealing only with the issue of cards. So therefore, if an order comes in, it will be dealt with immediately. We're hoping to turn these round literally in a couple of days. There should be no way that you should not have your card within a week, but hopefully as the orders come in, we should get them in 3 to 4 days. You should have your card there. So please share this information, get a card for all the family. This is one of the last chances you may have to address the government and the crimes committed against the people. If we don't do something now, there's a strong possibility you may not get the chance to do so in the future. And again, you have to think about our children and grandchildren. So please use this while it's still available, and we will have the constables up and running as soon as possible. Finally, before going today, we'd like to leave you with this message. Think about what's currently going on just now. Are you happy with the removal of your rights? Do you believe that you and your families will be protected by the state? Do you think their futures will be secured? Do you think our society as it exists just now will continue to flourish? Do you believe that we'll still have jobs, that the public can go out, that businesses will stay afloat? If you want to do something about what's going on just now and you want to stop this and protect the people, please get this message out. Share this information, purchase your cards, sign up to the Common Law Court. We are dealing with this just now in the coming weeks, and there will be many cases and issues that we'll be dealing with shortly, which we can highlight. In the meantime, what we would also say is that we have submitted paperwork to the courts, the so-called courts, statutory courts, which they're not, they're registered places of business. They're corporations run for profit, but we have actually submitted paperwork just now to defend various individuals. Now, this is to do with the lockdown. If you find you're on the receiving end and you have been charged or fined for failing to comply with their rules and guidelines, if you require help, please contact the Common Law Court, and we'll be able to forward information which will be able to assist you. These fines you do not have to pay, you do not have to comply with the legislation, but if you require help, please contact us and we'll be able to assist with this for you. Now, hopefully you can share this information. Please remember that while we've mentioned things like the health issues and the health implications for health workers, this also applies to various other occupations, whether it be in the media, the hospitality, things like the different groups, whether it be army veterans, things like that. This is applicable through everyone in society. Various groups are suffering because of this, and again, it's time to stand up. If you wish to contact us, please circulate the information, email us in for help, and once you've signed up, get your cards. We'll be able to progress matters. The more and more money that comes in, the more and more people will get to help, and so forth we'll be able to protect the public. So we'll leave this with you, and hopefully we'll be up in the next 2 or 3 days with an updated video and more information. Thank you for joining, and goodbye for just now.